Hi Stampers, this is Debbie Henderson from Debbie's Designs. I have a new video today showing you how to make this Hello Spring card. Has a little bit of embossing to it, emboss resist. And I just want to warn you that I do have a cold. I'm recovering from a cold, so my voice is a little different today. But let's get started and talk a little bit about this card. How I came up with this card. Stampin' Up! Started a couple months ago sending demonstrators workshop of the month instructions. They give us usually like 3 projects to work on, and I really liked how the card looked in this picture. Has all the measurements, the supplies that you need, and all of the directions, step-by-step directions are right here. I will list the link to view this PDF document at the end of my video. Just look in the comments section and I'll have the link right there for you. Wanted to show you the other project. You can see a little bit of it here. It's using the Curvy Keepsake die and using the same stamp set that I'm going to be using on the card today. And the third one is a wreath with the same stamp set. And the wreath has been stamped twice. And what you do on this one is you stamp it with the first color, and then you turn your stamp just a little bit and stamp the second color. So let's get started with all the supplies we're going to need today. For the card base, we're using Sahara Sand cardstock, 11 inches by 4 1/4 inches, scored at 5 1/2 at the center and folded. Shimmery white cardstock 4 by 4. I don't know if you can see that. It has a little bit of a shimmer to it. Really nice paper. Watermelon Wonder, and all we need is a scrap piece. And the Neutrals paper stack, 2 inches by 5 1/2 inch. And when you prepare this one here, you can actually use any of the colors that come in the Neutrals paper stack. There's a real good variety to pick from there, as you can see. The stamp set for today is Circle of Spring. We're using the wreath image, the bow image, and the Hello Spring image. I wanted to talk about this stamp set a little bit. The wreath we're actually going to cut out with the framelits dies along with the bow. Those can be found in the catalog on page 172. The wonderful wreath framelits dies, and it does have several pieces there. There's 7 dies total. The reason I wanted to show this to you is because we actually have 3 stamp sets that go with this framelits die set. This one is called Wondrous Wreath and is more focused on Christmas. And then we have another Christmas one, the Peaceful Wreath. So all 3 of these stamp sets use the same framelits dies. So you really get your money's worth when purchasing those framelits dies, because you can purchase all 3 stamp sets. You're also going to need, for ink colors, let me move this stuff over, Versamark, Crushed Curry, Tip Top Taupe, Mint Macaron, and Watermelon Wonder. You're also going to need sponge daubers for all 4 colors, and as you can see, I label mine so I don't have to clean them each time. I have 1 sponge for each ink color. You're going to need white embossing powder, and if you've followed me for quite some time, you know that I keep all my embossing powders in containers, and I'll show you why. Stamping dimensionals, and your stamping buddy. So let's get started on our card for today. You're also going to need a heat tool for this card today. So let's bring in the shimmery white, and I'm going to use my stamping buddy just to, this alleviates static in any of the powder once you have it on there flying on your piece of paper where you don't want it to. I'm going to bring in the wreath image, and I want to talk about this also because I know a lot of you have purchased this stamp set and the coordinating framelits. If you notice, the wreath has a little tab at the top, And when you look at the framelits, there's also a tab at the top. So what I normally do, I take a pencil and I write top on my piece of paper, because once we get sponging, you're probably going to turn your paper in different angles and you'll forget how to line up your wreath. So let's ink the wreath image with the Versamark, and I'm just tapping. And again, I'm looking for the notch, which is right there. And I'm going to make sure that that is facing towards where I wrote top of paper. I'm going to bring in my embossing powder. And the reason I keep mine in containers is so I can put my cardstock right inside and everything falls right back in. Something that I learned just recently also, I keep rice in my embossing powder so that it absorbs the moisture, because embossing powder does spoil. And I also keep these little things that come in pill bottles. That's another good thing to put in there. So let me put this away, so I don't want it all over the place. I'm going to go emboss this with my heat tool, and I'll be right back. You can see how the white embossing powder looks on my cardstock piece. So I'll put the video on hold and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my cardstock piece all embossed, and now you can see how shiny it is. And that's a good way to see if you actually ended up embossing everything that you needed to. Just hold it up to the light like that and you'll see that everything should be shiny. So let's bring in our sponges and our ink color. I'm going to start with Watermelon Wonder. Now, when you look at the card, you'll notice that I have the sentiment in the middle. So pay attention to not sponging in that middle section to leave room for stamping. And all I'm going to do is sponge the color on top of the embossing. I'm going to go a little bit out because we're going to cut this, and I want to make sure there's no white spaces when I'm done cutting. So I'm going to add about 3 areas with this color. Now we'll switch over to the crushed curry. And again, pay attention to not adding too much color in the center, and adding more on the outside. And my last color will be the mint macaron. And don't be afraid to overlap some of your colors, because it'll add a 4th and 5th color by doing that. So even though it looks a little wonky right now, once we cut it out, I'm going to add a little bit more watermelon. So there's my sponged wreath, and as I said, it looks a little wonky, but once we cut it out, it'll look like a wreath. So I'm going to go to my Big Shot machine. So let me move the ink over. I'll bring in my machine. I normally have my magnetic plate that I use when cutting this, but I'm all set up for a class in another room, so I'm not using the magnetic plate today. So again, this is the top of your wreath. This is the top of the framelit. So these should line up perfectly. You see how the leaves line up with each little dip? And I'm going to run this through. Okay, and this is what my wreath looks like. Isn't that pretty? So let's move all of this stuff over. And I will bring my wreath back in. And now we're going to use the Tip Top taupe ink, and I'll just clean this off. When you're doing small stamps like this, a lot of my customers will go tap, 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 and they get ink all over it. The easiest way to ink one of these smaller stamps is to just let it sit. That way you won't get all the little dots that might show up on your stamp image. See how good that came out? So now let's assemble our card. And I did go ahead and stamp the bow using Watermelon Wonder ink on Watermelon Wonder cardstock, and I cut it out with the framelits. We're going to bring in the Sahara Sand card base with my bone folder, and we're going to glue the designer paper strip in place. And for that, all you do is find the center of your card horizontally and go straight down, and I do have to trim my piece just a little bit. Now I'm going to glue the wreath in place using Stampin' Dimensionals. And make sure your sentiment is nice and straight. For the bow, I'm going to use my dimensionals, but I'm going to use the skinny strip on the side here and just cut a small portion, because you know we don't throw anything away. These are perfect for little areas. And that's going to go right on top of the wreath. And that completes today's card. Look how quick that was. And you can pretty much do this in any ink color that you want and using any designer paper strip. Real easy. These would be quick to mass produce. If you have any questions, leave comments on my blog or email me, or you can also leave a comment at the end of my YouTube video. And as I said, I'll have the link to the PDF document that you can print if you want to make any of these 3 projects. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good day.